All right, all right, all right. You're listening to the We're Talking Football podcast. I'm Weston. With me, as always, the right hand man, Lou. Lou, I only have one thing to say to you, and I'm going to sing it to you. The boys are back in town.
Oh, Jesus Christ, man.
Everybody stop listening right now because the next 45 minutes to an hour is going to be a complete waste of your time.
Yo, this has been wow. Hopefully we still got it. I mean, I feel like it's been a long time since we last did this. How long was that? A couple months?
So I was looking at my history, and it's been 3 months.
When you were like, okay, 3 months. Wow, a lot's happened in 3 months.
3 months. Yeah, I'm now a father of two.
Idiot.
That's part of it. Yeah, moron. Could have
I'm kidding.
should
I'm
have thought
kidding. I'm
that
kidding.
one through a little bit more. Nah, dude. Obviously, man.
Yeah, I'm playing.
Um, it's been a lot of fun. Got to enjoy it. Some time off of work, which honestly just promoted laziness. And Lou, I'm going to be honest with you because we're going to talk about it in just a minute here. Obviously, the football season's upon us. The true official first preseason game kicks off tomorrow evening. By the time this gets posted, we'll just say this evening will be that game. Obviously, our teams have some weekend excursions. But we're here, right? I mean, the 2023-2024 NFL season is upon us. But the truth is it's like this, post draft, it's just the same old song and dance, right? Like at least for 49ers fans over the last few years, it's the same topic time and time again that everybody's fixated on.
So
I'll
I'm gonna
mention what
interrupt.
that.
I'm gonna interrupt you real quick. So for people who want to know what's going on in free agency, pretty much every NFL veteran has a chip on their shoulder, and they're also in the best shape of their lives of all time. Every draft prospect is flashing and having being compared to NFL Hall of Fame players. And that's pretty much you hear it day in and day out. And you just really lose. I feel like it's just like white noise at a time. Everyone's doing great. There's no one that's doing bad, except for Trey Lance, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, except Trey Lance.
I had to fucking throw that
And
shot in.
obviously, don't. Of course, I appreciate the jab. Don't leave out that every player who had a halfway decent rookie year is about to take the next step in their
Next
second
step, man.
season in the
Next step,
NFL.
bro.
Like it's just rinse and repeat year over year. And I like to refer to the combine as the underwear Olympics. This is like round 2 of the underwear Olympics. Actually, what we're getting into right now is where, for me, the football season really begins. You're going to see a lot of bad football this week, right? Like week 1, you're not going to see a lot of your big name players. You're going to see some guys that are trying to make rosters, and you're going to see a lot of penalties, and the refs are rusty, the players are rusty, everything. But what happens after this week, to me, is what camp is really about. It becomes the war of attrition, right? Who stays healthy when they're on the field, and like who battles through the bumps and bruises that you get in August as you lead into September, and then what does your team look like come the first week of September, the first week of the NFL regular season. So this is where I start to get a little bit more excited. The juices start flowing because finally now pads are on, like no more scouting what a defensive end looks like in a one-on-one drill where they have 10 yards of open space on every side on each side of them. Now it's the real deal. I'm excited for it. Can't wait for the season. I'm at a loss for words because I feel like, very specifically as a 49ers fan, obviously there's a lot of talk around certain positions and certain players, and now it's like, okay, here's the outcome. We've speculated on what the outcome was going to be for the last 6 months. Now we're about 30 days away from seeing exactly what the outcome is going to be, and I can't wait for it.
Yeah, for me, see, you said you were excited. For me, my mentality going into the NFL season right now as a Chargers fan is, oh shit, here we go again. Let's buckle up. Um, tempered expectations, even though they are, well, I'm not gonna say as high as they were last year. That being said, um, just I'm just praying for health at this point. Watching every tweet that carefully worded and everything of that nature. So it's important for Charger fans just to get through the preseason unscathed. Easy said, harder to do as a LA Charger fan.
Yeah, no doubt. So let's not give away too much. Real quick, let's just reiterate, great to be back. I think we have a really awesome season ahead of us, just from a pure content perspective. I think you'll see more from Lou independently talking about his Chargers, myself independently talking about the 49ers. My expectation is this year we're going to have a lot of, I would love a lot of guests, some familiar faces that you've seen before, hopefully some new faces that we can bring into the equation. But for tonight and tonight only, let's focus on the basics, right? We started to talk a little bit about like why we don't love the offseason as much and what's going on. So really what I love to cover this evening is, you call it glass half empty, glass half full. I'll call it optimistic versus pessimistic related to our team's season outlook. So we'll cover each of those. Then another thing right now is you have a lot of veterans, good players that have good pedigrees behind them that are still on the waiver wire as free agents that are going to impact some teams. And we're probably a week or two away from seeing those names land, right? These are veterans. They don't play in week 1, week 2 anyway. So let's see what that amounts to, and we'll go from there. So, Lou, I'm going to let you start with your Chargers.
Okay.
I want you to talk to me about what's taken place thus far in the off season or during camp. And then I want you to end it with, is your glass half full or is your glass half empty?
All right. So going into this season, the one thing I do like about this Chargers team, I feel like the media noise and everything surrounding them is not as much hyped as it was last year. Last year was a huge offseason for them, and they once again were the offseason winners. And this year, I feel like because what they did, um, pretty much just retaining their own players, not really bringing anyone new outside of Eric Kendricks. I feel like there's not a lot of hype around them, and they're kind of flying under the radar because you still mentioned the Chiefs, the top echelon teams, Chiefs, Bills, the Jets. Those are your teams. The Bengals. Those are the teams where I feel like they're getting more hype and more attention than the Chargers, because the Chargers really didn't make any moves, during this offseason. What's going on this offseason? A lot of nothingness, and that's great. There's no drama. And what I mean by that, Justin Herbert deal got done. That was huge. That seemed pretty seamless. I was pretty fairly confident that it was always going to get done. I never, as a pessimistic Chargers fan, I never thought that there was going to be an issue in regards to that. Austin Eckler, he's back as well with incentive, deal there. So he's back into the fold. There's no holdout or hold-ins, from him. Their rookie, Quentin Johnson, has been flashing during. I'm actually doing what I said I hated, right before, but their rookie Quentin Johnson, wide receiver, he's been
Hall of
flashing.
Fame career coming for
Yeah,
him.
I mean, he's eerily reminiscent of Devontae Adams. I'm telling you, man. No, but all kidding aside, but they don't need him to be that wide receiver one. He's fitting in beautifully, as a wide receiver 3 right now, with the ability to become a wide receiver 1. And I think the story, of the offseason has to be none other than J.C. Jackson. After we talked about the Herbert deal, J.C. Jackson suffered a horrific injury against the Seahawks last year. There was large speculation that this guy was going to start, on the pup, in the beginning of the year, miss at least 6 games. This guy's already practicing with pads on, and that is extremely encouraging. to see him come back from such a horrific knee injury where people do have a difficult time to come back from. So to see him back in the fold adds some depth to that secondary. And once again, I'm doing it. I can't believe I'm falling victim to everything I hate. Asante Samuel Jr. has been balling out, picking passes off in offseason in camp left and right and playing really well. So those are some of the encouraging things that are happening right now in training camp.
So what about on the injury front? Anything catastrophic so far? Minus a couple expected bumps and bruises, Veterans Day off. Yeah, you knock on wood. I know.
You hear
I
that?
get it.
You know what the sad
Yeah.
thing is? I don't think this is even real wood, so I'm not sure how much that's gonna fucking help me. But yeah, from an injury standpoint, there are no significant injuries. Alluding to what you were saying before, is my glass half full or glass half empty? Still, I'm gonna say it's still half full, and let me tell you why. First and foremost, health. Everyone is healthy, coming into this season. Something that they've always had issues in the past. Last year, even JC Jackson during training camp had to get a procedure done. So everyone is looking fully healthy, which is fantastic. If they can keep everyone on the field, this is a Chargers team that won 10 games that were decimated by injuries because of health. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams only played 4 games together. Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack only played 6 games together last year. They had a vision last year. We all were excited by this vision and this team, and it never came to fruition. And the reason being is because they couldn't get their star players on the field together. And they won 10 games, by the way, last year. If they can somehow, some way, and this is huge, but just manage to have some of that history, some of that NFL, luck, injury luck, like the Philadelphia Eagles had last year. The Eagles were fantastic. They were considered, a good team going into last year, but I wouldn't really say a lot of people would predict them to go to the Super Bowl. I'm saying predict them to go to the Super Bowl, but they had everyone on their team available to them, and they rarely succumbed to any injuries. That's huge. So if the Chargers can have that injury luck, like the Eagles did, last year, they're going to be an extremely difficult team, to beat. So far, so good with the injury standpoint. Secondly, the biggest weakness on this team last year was the offensive play calling. We made jokes about the utilization of stick routes and what have you, but for the first time in a long time, Chargers have an answer from an offensive standpoint, and it comes in with Kellen Moore. I'm really excited what he's doing this offseason and what he really can bring to the Chargers. He brings diversification from a play calling standpoint. He's moving everyone all around, all their weapons all around. And what I mean by that, normally Mike Williams is a boundary wide receiver. He's moving him into the slot, probably to clear out the field so Quentin Johnson can run those underneath drag routes. And that's what he's brought in to do, is pretty much those drag routes and take those 7 yards catch, make it go to 25. And then you have Keenan Allen not only isolated playing the slot, he's actually getting a chance to fill that Amari Cooper role and play on the boundary as well. So they have Kellen Moore is going into his bag. I really feel like he's mixing it up with who plays where from a wide receiver standpoint, and that's going to be really difficult, I think, for NFL defenses to really hone in on, because there's not one guy, and they have solid depth when it comes to the wide receiver position now, because now you're talking about Joshua Palmer being their number 4 or number 3 at best. As of last year, they really needed him to be a number 2. That was a little to be honest, that was a far stretch. I'm not a Joshua Palmer truther, to be honest with you, but him as a 3 or a 4, I think he can do work there. So they address their offensive skill, their offensive positions, right? Their offensive coordinator position right there with a really savvy, perhaps one of the best play callers in the NFL. And last but not least, I mentioned this before, but it sounds corny, but continuity. They didn't bring a lot of people in this year, because frankly, they didn't need to, because last year they did all that heavy lifting. I love the fact that they brought in everyone back, and there was talks about them cutting Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. These were all names that were getting thrown around that they were going to get that they were going to release this offseason, and I'm glad they didn't. They're making a one more run with with this group because it's really talented, and I think it's going to be huge especially from a mental psyche. I think you want these guys back. You want the same guys back in the locker room because you want these same guys that were in the locker room back in Jacksonville a couple of months ago. You want these guys that experienced that Jacksonville defeat, that hatred of what the happened, and pretty much they're choking. So I think that is a between the continuity from a communication standpoint on the field, but also from a team standpoint too. You want them back because they have that fire burning in them because they all experienced what happened in Jacksonville and they're tired of hearing it. If you bring a bunch of new players in, they weren't here what happened that Jacksonville game. It doesn't hold water to them. It doesn't light a match under their ass, right? So I like the fact that they brought some continuity. They have continuity among the offensive line, the secondary, and the edges. So
Yeah, listen, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? I think one of the major tweaks was we talked about it all last year was creativity from a play calling standpoint, and I think you rid yourself of what may or may not have been holding you back, and maybe that was the OC, and you bring in somebody who's a little bit more creative, certainly has a ton of experience in running a high-powered offense, right, as he did in Dallas with Kellen Moore. I think that's huge. I love that you got the Herbert thing out of the way. We all know this is a quarterback-driven league, and you guys got a gosh darn good one. I don't care what anybody wants to say about he's not winning. But listen, quarterback wins is not a quarterback stat. We talk about that ad nauseum here. Wins are a team stat, and I think you easily have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, which gives you a chance to contend, not just in your conference, but in your division year over year over year, regardless of the talent. But I love the continuity around them. You got to imagine the injury bug's going to look a little bit different than it did last year, right? Like it can't be that bad again. And if that bolsters things for you on the defensive side of the ball, where you felt it kind of probably the most last season when all said and done, like that puts you in a spot with this conference. So, and you're
let
a
me tell you
playoff
something
team.
about that.
You're a fluke away from being a divisional round playoff team. You know what I mean?
Let me tell you something about injuries. The last time we had that positive injury luck was, I think, in 2018, is when Rivers was still on the team and Anthony Lynn was coaching, and we were really healthy that year. Ingram and Bosa played together. Derwin James on the field. And look what happened there. We made the playoffs, tied the Chiefs with the same record in the AFC West, but they had the tiebreaker, right? So we didn't win the division, but we still had a fantastic record. Went to the playoffs, went to Baltimore, smacked Baltimore in Baltimore, then played against the New England Patriots, the Tom Brady New England Patriots, and that's he's like Thanos. He's inevitable. He's going to beat you. So, but we made that run when we had that positive injury luck, hoping they can continue that tradition, and if as long as they get everyone on the field, they're all pro left tackle back. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's important. And then they're bringing back the same 5 offensive linemen, which is huge. People don't realize how huge that is because from a communication standpoint and like who likes to block how in different ways, and like they all are in sync and lockstep when it comes to their tendencies. That's really important. You don't have to worry about shuffling the offensive line. The same starters are there, and they're just going to build upon what they were last year.
Yeah. Listen, I thought you said your glass is half full. From an outsider perspective,
Reluctantly.
Yeah, my glass would be helpful, half full, without reluctancy. But I think expectations are different, right? Like I don't think you're walking in. I think you would comfortably say if you saw a divisional round playoff game based on the conference that you play in, you'd be pretty satisfied with that season.
So yeah, you asked me as a Chargers fan, what is a successful season for me? It's seeing them going into the playoffs, winning a game, and make going to the divisional route and making a competitive game on that one.
Yeah, I'd be half full too. Anything else you want to add?
Go Chargers.
Go Bolts. Bolt up, baby. Um, and stay tuned for the Lightning Lounge. No, I'm kidding. That being said, let's transition right to my Niners. And
I feel like we could just rinse, wash, and repeat with your Niners every offseason.
I think from the outside, people are a little bit more bullish than I probably am. You're coming off 2 consecutive appearances in the NFC Championship game, none of which, by the way, amounted to a Super Bowl appearance. In 2020, the 2021-22 season, that felt improbable based on the way that the season started. Even the middle of the season looked, they just went on a little bit of a run. They were just hot at the right time. Like, arguably, they were the hottest team in football up until the NFC Championship game, a game they should have won. Then you have this team who just rolled the 2023 season. They just rolled the back half of the year, right? Rattled off, what was it, 8 or 9 straight, 10 straight, right? 8 or 9 of those under Brock Purdy. And then obviously the disaster that was the NFC Championship game, where we literally just didn't even have a quarterback we could trot out there for 3/4 of the game. You now find out that Josh Johnson was like basically slightly concussed even going into that game, right? And still played and went out there and then got hurt out there. So neither here nor there. Part of the reason why I took 3 months off is related to my feelings and thoughts around the 49ers. And it's the same old song and dance. It's been the same old song and dance for a few years. It's like, what's the quarterback situation really going to look like? And I am really just tired of analyzing. Brock Purdy was 4 of 9, and Trey Lance was 5 of 8, and Sam Darnold was 7 of 10 and 7 on 7, and this and 11 on 11, and blah, blah. I don't fucking care. Like, I literally don't care. That's not real. I don't know why we're spending time analyzing this. As long as these guys look like they can make an NFL throw here or there, let me see them when there's an opposing 11 lined up against them. That's what matters. Because here's the truth. 49er content creators, myself included in these dialogues, you're nitpicking everything. And we all have our opinion. The truth is the decision has probably already been made. Now, the reality is
oh, hold on. You think so?
Yes, I do. I firmly
believe.
So
are you saying that based upon first and second and third team reps? Is there a huge disparage between all three?
I don't think there is a huge disparity. I think the decision has been made that, okay, Brock is practicing. Nobody knew when he was going to really be back based on the recovery from a not familiar NFL type injury. When you think of Tommy John and all that stuff and the UCL, but he's back, and he's back sooner than anticipated. And then you go off a body of work. And the truth is, it's hard to ignore the result of his body of work in the back half of the year. So what does that tell me? It's probably his position to lose. The only thing that can change that is injury, or if in these games under design plays, controlled environments, if he just looks like he's not healthy or that was a fluke in some capacity, they feel confident in who they have behind them. But the decision's been made. Like, Brock Purdy's QB1, he will be week 1, and it's a matter if he stays healthy and plays well to see if and when he might get replaced.
Yeah, so I'm not disagreeing with you that Brock Purdy is probably going to be the starter week 1, as long as his health, as long as he has his health. But if the decision is made, why wouldn't they give him way more reps than Trey Lance and Sam Darnold? Because these are young quarterbacks. They need as many first team reps as possible, to build that rapport, that chemistry with your skill positions. And you can't just break it up into 3 because, you can't be like, 10, 10, 10. Purdy needs those extra reps, and so
I don't disagree.
Really made. Why wouldn't he get those reps?
I don't
Extra
disagree.
reps.
Here's what I'm questioning about the team is why does the rep division look the way it does in every practice to the point where Brandon Allen has taken first team reps, right? Like on top of this, or why is he getting any reps if this is a practice squad quarterback? You're probably going to carry 3 in the season. What that combination of 3, based on what has happened to them last year, you're going to carry 3 on your 53-man roster because you never know. This is a question that I have, and this leads me to my answer down the line, because I'm stating that Brock Purdy will be your week 1 quarterback barring injury, right? He'll be your week 1 regular season quarterback barring injury. Doesn't mean I agree with that decision. Just telling you that's what the result's going to be. So outside of that,
are you a Trey? Are you team Trey? Can we get you to commit?
I'll answer that in a second.
Don't be a yeah. I just want to know: will the fans?
No, I'll answer that question. Just let me.
I want you to commit.
I'll answer that question. I swear to God.
Okay.
And no politician the way that I normally politic.
Yeah.
Like I will give you a flat out answer on that.
Yeah.
No
I want people to be offended with your answer.
But I want to be very clear. When all is said and done, I root for this team, right? I don't really root for the number on the back or the name on the back, and I certainly don't root for anybody who wears the number. I like sexy numbers, and 13 is not a sexy number, right? So like I don't buy those jerseys.
Dan Marino.
I wasn't a Miami Dolphin fan. Don't care. Although I do think he's one of the greatest to ever do it, and just gets overlooked because he never won a Super Bowl. Neither here nor there. That's why Brock wears 13 is because of Dan Marino, by the way. That being said, I'll answer that question, but let me talk a little bit about the rest of camp. So outside of that, which is the talk of the town, there are some things to be optimistic about related to camp. I think from everything that I saw, all the content out there, every video clip that I've seen, read a ton of, while we weren't out here giving our conjecture, I was certainly retaining information and keeping up on information. It's nice to see that Talanoa Hufanga on paper seems to continue to rise, right? The defense is still dominating the offense, which is what I expect at this point in camp. And I candidly makes me feel good that the defense still looks this good, right? Because you've now gone from Saleh to Ryans to Steve Wilks, right? What's the continuity look like for this defense? And that's one of the things that has catapulted us into the playoffs regularly and through the conference is the caliber of this defense and what they're doing to other teams out there, right? So feeling like that's positive, right? We know we're going to carry a ton of defensive linemen. I think the other thing that is from an injury perspective to this point in time, not a whole lot to be talked about. The biggest concern to me is there was a Debo scare. It was a scare. Nothing, tremendous happened out of that. The other thing that I think about is Elijah Mitchell continues to get banged up, right? It's more sad. You know how Kyle Shanahan feels about the running back position outside of this offensive weapon, wide back, McCaffrey / Debo combination that they got going. You need that guy healthy because goddamn, this offense looked good when McCaffrey was healthy. I think Jordan Mason was an unsung hero last year, and the more reps you give this guy, I don't even think you'll miss Elijah Mitchell when all is said and done, if that should happen. So plug and play there. Outside of that, you had your subtractions, you had your additions. What to me is crazy is we still had a lot of picks this year. We made a lot of those picks. I don't even think 3/4 of these guys make the roster, right? They don't even make the 53. So there's going to be a lot of talent out there that came out of this draft, young talent that other teams are going to get, especially when I look at some of the people on the defensive side of the ball. I'm really high on Jair Brown. Loved that pick out of Penn State. Love that I feel uber confident this guy makes 53 and is probably working himself into some packages really early in the season. That's great. Seeing some growing pains, fine. By all accounts, Colton McKivitz, gone is Mike McGlinchey, who, by the way, just got banged up in practice, actually, as well for the Broncos. That's a question mark. You didn't know what you had in Colton McKivitz, and now he's going to be your starting right tackle. So that's you're eliminating a little continuity along that line from last year's starters, what's that going to look like? By all accounts, holding up really well against a really talented defensive line, sans Nick Bosa, who hasn't been at practice yet. Still, for the most part, looking good. So camp has gone the way that I've needed it to go so far. Minimal injuries to big name players. I think people they were hoping would stepped in, like Isaiah Oliver, who Wilkes has always saw multiple times in the division, et cetera. I think he's cemented himself into that nickelback slot corner position, which is nice because gone is Jimmy Ward, right? Where he cemented himself. So certainly want to see what that looks like. But here's the real deal, dude. Is this still boils down to the most important position in professional sports, which is the quarterback. So honestly, my glass is half empty.
Interesting.
And here's why. Okay. Expectations are different. I just said earlier, 3 out of the last 4 seasons, we've been in the NFC Championship game. In one of the last 4 seasons, we've played in a Super Bowl, one that we probably should have won. That being said, there are 0 Lombardis hoisted at this point. So if you're telling me 3 out of the last 4 seasons, we've been in the NFC Championship game. The one season we weren't, I've never seen a team as injured as we were during that season. That was absurd. So the expectation is, why are we not in the NFC Championship game? Why are we not competing for a Super Bowl based on the layout ahead of us in the NFC conference, which at this point is an inferior conference? I just don't know if I don't feel confident it happens again. So anything short, I think if you make it to the NFC Championship game, I'll call it a push. Anything short of that, failure, right? Like based on what expectations are. You want me to be a glass half full guy? I got to feel really confident that I see this team in the Super Bowl. I'm not even saying winning it, because I think the AFC is leaps and bounds better than the NFC right now. I'm just saying I don't feel that way because the football is an oddly shaped utensil. It bounces in funny ways, and to expect that this team would go 13-4 again during the regular season and go on a run like they did at the end of last season, it's just not probable. It's just like the law of averages say that it won't happen. And here's my answer to your question before, Lou. I am a Trey Lance guy over a Brock Purdy guy. That is not a slate to Brock Purdy. That is to, in my opinion, this team played ultimate team football. Brock Purdy did just enough, a little bit above probably what he was asked to do, but did what he was asked to do really well with a lot of good pieces around him. And look how it turned out, right? I just don't know. And that was like this little Cinderella unsung hero story, 3rd string rookie quarterback, Mr. Irrelevant, blah, 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 blah. It's a different fucking ball game now, bro. If the expectations are you the starter going into the season, I don't care who you are, you carry that differently, you will perform differently. And I'm yet to believe that he carries it that way. What I'm saying,
one second. But don't you think him having he didn't have full off season training camp really last year, and he was thrusted into the starting role like literally like a deer in headlights? You don't think? I understand what you're saying. There's some doubt because of probably where he was drafted, right? So, but you don't think that perhaps having a full off season, regimen with his main weapons will maybe perhaps counteract that regression that you're expecting?
Maybe. And listen, I could be totally wrong. You asked me a question and I'm not playing politics with you. I'm going point blank. What I saw last season, I know it was only his rookie season, but here we are just going into his 2nd season. I didn't see elite intangibles. I didn't see anything that screams to me that this guy is going to become a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, which is what it takes to win Super Bowls in this league, right? Like the 2000 Baltimore Ravens defense doesn't freaking exist anymore, right? Like That's what the expectation is. And I'm not saying Trey Lance is that either. What I'm saying is he does, to me, carry more of the upside in the intangibles than Brock Purdy does. And I still don't think this man's gotten a fair shake. Like we gave him the keys. We gave him the keys to the castle last season, right? Fluke injury, weird thing happens. This man's never been in the offense with. He's played like 2 games with George Kittle, right? Like he's never seen Christian McCaffrey in his backfield and what could be drawn up. Like it,
I understand what you're saying, but this team is here to build to win now.
no doubt, no doubt.
And
But
in my opinion, this is a foreigner's opinion, so take for it is. Trey Lance is still a rookie mentally. You said he's played 2 games. He hasn't played a full season, meaning he still hasn't seen, 16, 17 games of NFL defenses live. So I can see why they might use him more of a break here and break glass in case of emergency type of thing with Trey Lance. And if Brock Purdy does, because he showed you at least a half the season and into the playoffs that hey,
8 games. He played 8 games.
That's 4 times the amount that Trey Lance has played. So I can
2
see
times the amount, but yes, I know what you're saying.
I thought he only played 2 games last year, right?
2 games last year, but he's played like 5 in total, 4 in total.
Okay, but I'm just saying that like I don't know if they're built to win now, they can't afford him to be a rookie. And I get why you like him, the intangible, something what he can bring different than you're looking for something different than your traditional pocket passer, Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's what you're looking for, right? So he brings he has an athletic profile that is completely different. You love the big arm, but there's a problem. Can't just fall in love with the athleticism. It's in here too, the decision making. So can he throw with anticipation? And I know this is something that sparks Niners fans' asses, or really chaps their asses. Is people, talking heads do question his decision making ability, throw anticipation, and I don't know. I just think they can't afford right now the Niners to have someone that's just not going to play within the offense.
Here's the truth. There's not enough of a sample size on Trey Lance to say that he can or he can't. There's just not, right? So like we are all just projecting here what our thoughts and our opinions are. But I would also argue there's not enough sample size on Brock. Again, dude, I'm not shitting on Brock. I'm not at all. Like I loved what he did last year, right? Like it was fun. It was exciting. It proved me wrong. I'm well documented how like my initial thought was like when he went in the Miami game, like flush the season, bro. Here's your 3rd string quarterback. Like how often does this happen? But I'm just saying the expectations are going to be a little bit different. And if it's my team, it's clearly not my team. I don't make those decisions. If it's my team, I'm putting a little bit more of I have to see what I have in 5, right? And here's the truth. Yes, we are win now, but you can still make these decisions early in the season when your season is not fully dictated for you, when the slate ahead of you is the NFC. Right? Like, me, I'm like, every game matters, right? Every game's the most important game, blah, blah, blah. That's actually more true for AFC teams than it really is for NFC teams. Like, dude, look at it. The 49ers were 2-5 in 2021, 2022, went to the NFC Championship game. At one point, they were 3-4, 1-2, and then 3-4 in the 22-23 season, still played in the NFC Championship game. So 3-4, that's 7 games. That's almost half of the season for things to get figured out, so I think the margin for error is small when you're making these decisions, but it can still be made early in the season. That's just my thought. And dude, I'm just going to reiterate, glass half empty, because I just think it's really hard to be that. We haven't seen that level of consistency since the Patriots dynasty, right? Where you just could almost write in that they were going to be in the conference championship year over year over year over year. And this ain't the same team as that. It's just not,
I know from a fan standpoint, our expectations for the teams that we root for are completely different, because of our history, of the teams that we support. For me, my mindset would be it would have to be glass half full for the mere fact that you guys play in the NFC. Who really scares you? There's one, maybe two teams,
Yeah.
maybe, and I can say to Eagles. Okay, I get it, or the Cowboys. But even that, you can kind of laugh um, because of their coach, right? And if you're not a Dak believer too, so looking at this,
The
who's
truth is,
scaring
no
you?
team actually
Like
scares us.
you
I think
should
we're
get
the
to the NFC Championship.
should should, but the law of probability
That's
says you won't. That's just what it is, right? And that's where again the bar
Chicago,
is set. It
Detroit, Green Bay, Minnesota. Are they even going to get to the NFC Championship? That's
no, no,
boom, one
listen, there's
conference,
not a
NFC
team in the
North.
NFC that actually scares me. I mean, part of why I'm a little softer on Philly is like you and I have seen this firsthand. Like Super Bowl hangover is a real thing the
Yeah,
majority of the time. It's a real thing. Like they had a really, really impressive freaking season last year. It's hard to do. It's hard to replicate that. Even when you have the same team on paper, it's hard to replicate those things, right?
yeah.
Like they didn't really experience any adversity throughout the season. And the losses they did have is Gardner Minshew at quarterback, end of the season when it didn't really matter. And it felt like it mattered a little bit because they almost lost that 1 seed status, right? Like, but there wasn't a ton of adversity throughout the year. This year's going to be different. They're going to get everybody's best game, right? Like they're going to get everybody's time, attention, preparation, etc. So you can't expect it to go the same way for them. They were
Yeah.
pretty injury free last year, right? Does that go the same way? The Super Bowl hangover works in funny, funny ways, and you don't know how it's going to creep up on you. I'm not afraid of any team in the NFC because we beat on teams. Do you remember that stat last year where every team that played us, minus the Kansas City Chiefs because they had a bye week after us, every team that played us, including the Eagles in the NFC Championship, lost the next game that they played.
Yeah.
We beat up on teams. That's the mentality, and so I don't fear that. I'm just saying that, like, dude, like the turnover margin, injuries, big plays, big time, like things just happen. The ball, I always kind of summarize as the ball bounces in funny ways, right? Like, and for the ball to bounce your way to say that 3 consecutive seasons you're in the NFC Championship, that's a tall order. And that's my bar. That's my bar. Like, why would it be any less? Like, the playoffs is not my bar. I've seen that.
But I would
I've
feel
seen that.
confident. Like you said, no team fears. I would feel confident you can reach your bar.
You know who I fear the most? My own team. My own team is the problem.
Okay.
All right. Let's get out of this fucking no man's land right now before I drink myself retarded. All right, real quick. Let's talk a little bit. We mentioned earlier about some, you know what? Before we do that, I told you I'm going to have a curveball for you. Here's my curveball. 2 minutes, no more spent on this topic. Because we talk about it ad nauseum and we just don't realize we do. But here it's, what do you make of this running back situation in the NFL? Which, example, Saquon Barkley, what he went through to get his contract. Now you got Jonathan Taylor, right? Holding out, doing things like, what do you make of it? Is there anything you think of when you just think about the running back position in the NFL?
It's crazy. I've heard of both sides of the story. Both sides of the spectrum here. And I'll tell you right now, I don't know how you can make an exception for one position on the field. Like I just don't understand. I think LaDainian Tomlinson actually says something on NFL Network about like a week ago. What maybe you can do is allow NFL running backs to come out a year. I'm not NFL, college running backs to come out a year earlier, and for eligibility standpoint, so they would have the ability to earn that second or third paycheck. That 1 year, it makes a difference, right? I just don't know how you're going to rectify what is the solution here. I don't get it. I get both sides of the spectrum. These are talented players that help carry their team, But if you look at the track record, yeah, they fall apart. They fall off the cliff steeply. So if you're investing in something and realize, yeah, at this point, your money is going to drop, 28%. What do you want to get out of it or not be a little more cautious from an owner standpoint? So I get both sides of the spectrum. I personally, this is above my pay grade, don't know what the hell to do. The LT thing is the most it's the most makes the most sense what he said. But other than that, people are talking about special pay wage scales for them and stuff like that. How do you just do that for one position? I don't get it. So
Yeah, I don't think there's a clear resolution in sight, to be honest. And I bring this up because I was asked this question. So shout out to Andrew Curtis, who is a listener to the We're Talking Football podcast and a frequent commenter on YouTube, mind you. And I'll let him know that we responded to this. There's no immediate resolution, but why I think like they have to find something that's a little bit different is because these running backs who have played running back their entire life, right? Like from Pop Warner football all the way through, like it's a position that they choose, is become extremely devalued. Next man up, right? All about schemes. But the truth is, the teams that run the football the best tend to be contenders. I'm not saying they win it. They still tend to be contenders because they control the clock. They do things, right? Like they keep other offenses off the field.
I'm gonna agree to disagree with you here.
All right. Well, I'm just telling you, the running game is still important, even in a pass happy offense. But the truth
Yes.
is the position, or in a pass happy league is what I meant to say. But the truth is the position is just extremely devalued because of the shelf life. You never hear, unless your name is Frank Gore, who looks younger than he did when he was 22 and entered the league, and he's 40, who's, by the way, is back with the 49ers in a coaching capacity. No,
playing.
yeah, not on the roster. Not on the roster. When I first saw the news, I was like, tell me this is actually happening right now. But in any case, like you mentioned it. When they fall hard and fast. And we always said 30 is the age of death. It's happening even sooner now for these guys. I don't know. I did like what LT proposed, or maybe the rookie wage scale looks a little bit different if they're picked, right? Like early.
Yeah. All right. Can I ask you a question? Let's say the rookie wage scale is taken into consider a factor that it's more advantageous for running back for them to get a better contract. Do you think that would have an adverse effect where teams won't draft a first round running back then because they have to pay them more? You gotta think about like there's a whole thing. First round running backs automatically become like top, I want to say 7 at their position from a salary standpoint, right?
Yeah.
That is insane. That is insane. That a rookie running back not touching the field is already paid as like a top 7 player at his or her at his position, right? So that is insane. So I don't know like what you would really. I don't know. I don't know the answer because That was another thing. Yeah, you pay them a little more on their rookie contracts. But if I'm a team, like, all right, I'll just wait till round 2 if they're a prospect,
Yeah, and then maybe round 2 means they get traditional round 1 money. I don't know like what the scale is, but here's what I do know is any team that is building a foundation or preparing for the future, right? That is not an immediate contender. If you're drafting a running back in the first round, you already missed, right? Like you already missed because that's not a player that you could bank on for the next 5-6 years as a foundational player, like you could like an edge rusher, a stud wide receiver, the quarterback, a left tackle, an interior defensive lineman or some, right? Like if you're a team that is in prime position and you draft a running back in the first round, and that's the piece that you feel like you're missing, like now you can pound it, right? And now this guy's going to get paid, and now you're not really necessarily worried about. I don't know. There's no answer, but here's the truth. The way that the NFL was developed, the position doesn't go away. It's just the value of the player who plays the position that is dissipated over time.
maybe you know what, I'm making something up on the fly. Maybe you can't for a first round running back, you can have them as a 4-year contract. They can't do a fifth year option, right?
Yeah, get them to
Something,
year two
yeah, you know what I'm saying?
contract
Like
year faster.
maybe
Yeah.
it's something like that. But I understand what all these running backs are saying, and I'm gonna look real bad saying this, but look from the owner's standpoint. Like if there's proven data that they're gonna fall apart, like why would you heavily invest in something like that? You know what I'm saying? Like why would you go against the probability
Yeah,
of
I mean,
decline
listen,
play?
I have a higher likelihood of being an NFL owner than I do a player at this point in my life, so I'll side with the owners, and it's like it's a
Oh
it's
man,
a
I'm in my backyard, doing pass pro sets.
it's honestly like it's a business still at the end of the day, and the business says, you know what hurts the running backs is there's no actual proof of a running back post 30 performing. Period, point blank. Like it's not there, right? Like if
And
there was a sample
you know
size,
what's
you could be the
crazy?
outlier.
And these running backs aren't touching the ball like they were back in the day.
No, no. You know what running backs seem to have a little bit more longevity is guys that aren't true like between the tackle, like are more schematic, catch the ball out of the backfield, get the
Yeah,
ball
you're
in space.
versatile. You're
Yeah,
Darren
because
Spro. You're
you
Darren
minimize the
Sproles.
hits.
You're Darren
Yeah.
Sproles type of, yeah.
You minimize the hits, man. Like they take a fucking pounding. And you know what
Yeah.
you need to do is you just need to like, or you know what they need to do? They need to set up a preseason where you're just not allowed to hand the ball off. Right?
Regular
You
season, yeah.
minimize 50, 60 carries on that back or on your backs. You take away 25 to 30 extra hits, right? Maybe all of that combined gives you a year, another year that person might be a viable option for you. Reason why I put that in between, I now want to transition into talking of let's play a little matchmaker. If you
I
matchmaker,
knew you
make
were, dude,
me a
bro.
match.
I knew you were gonna. I knew you were
I'm in
gonna
a
sing that.
singing mood tonight, dude. You want to know why? Because my newborn, bro, I can't. I am so tone deaf. It's fucking embarrassing.
Nah,
But
nah.
this kid, my firstborn did not do this. But this kid, when I sing and I sing to a song with the toothless all gum smile that I get from him, I'm like, hell yeah, dude. I'm the equivalent of I'm the male version of Whitney Houston up in here right now in his ears. But
Uh,
I want to play matchmaker, and I asked you this first because the first one I want to talk to you about is I think the most prized possession in the free agent market right now. Surprise, surprise, is a running back. And I think it's the former Minnesota Viking, Dalvin Cook. So, Lou, I just did a lot of talking about the 49ers. Thank you for engaging with me. But I'll pass it to you. What's your match for Mr.
who would
Cook?
I who would I partner Dalvin Cook up with?
Yeah.
I'm looking at all these teams right now, and I have I am looking to give a team in the once again, all good players go to the AFC, by the way.
That's it,
So
man.
so obviously I'm fixated on the AFC. But let's throw Dalvin Cook. Let's keep him in purple. And let's throw Dalvin Cook on the Baltimore Ravens. You're like, what? What are you talking about? They have J.K. Dobbins, right? All right. Well,
Yeah.
J.K. Dobbins, I do love him as a player and a prospect, but obviously injuries has been a significant part of his playing career, and he's not as explosive as Dalvin Cook. Picture having Dalvin Cook and Lamar Jackson in the backfield, not knowing which one's going to take the RPO handoff. I think that would throw some fear in the eyes of opposing defenses. And now they have also skill position players on the outside with Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham, Bateman, or Batsman, if you know, you know,
Bats, man.
and
If you
Mark
know, you
Andrews.
know.
And Mark Andrews. So you can't really stack the box, right? So I love the fact that you would have Dalvin Cook on a light box and to have a mobile quarterback to keep him honest. That is who I think he'd be the most fun on. I'm not saying it's going to happen. That's not the one I'm predicting is going to happen, but I think that would be pretty goddamn cool to see him wearing the Ravens helmet.
Yeah. God, that would make the AFC so much fun. But here lies the rub. Like Dalvin has been a highly productive running back in the NFL, right? When healthy, highly productive. But he is encroaching upon that age that says the cliff is going to get real steep real fast. So
Yeah.
where can you
Well, that's why I said Baltimore, because J.K. Dobbins can
yeah.
sit.
Get a nice balance, right? He doesn't have to tote the rock 300 times this year.
Yeah.
I have two teams in mind. You said keep them in purple. I'll say keep them in the division. And I would say the Chicago Bears.
Okay.
Now, I first of all, like as a player to go play your former team twice a year, right? Like 2 games that you're going to get up a little higher for. One of them's guaranteed to be back where you have made your money and built your career. I look at like Khalil Herbert. I know Donta Foreman had a good end of the year last year, so they're probably pretty high on him. But I feel like you get a nice little share in Chicago versus and maybe buy you a little bit of longevity. I don't think Chicago is where he winds up because I don't think he stays in Division B. I think Chicago is still a few more pieces away from being like highly competitive in a winnable division that he doesn't make a ton of sense for them right now on what it's going to cost and what you're going to need to give them. So the other team I look at, you mentioned the AFC gets better. Why not the Miami Dolphins? Right? Like players at his point in his career made a couple bucks, high profile names. They love being in South Beach on a roster that is Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. Like what an offset.
He went to college
Went to
there.
college in Florida. He's from Florida, isn't he? From Florida. He's from Florida. Like I don't know. It just feels like it's got a match made in heaven for him on a good offense that is still going to be enough relying upon the run, but it's going to want to move the ball downfield under Mike McDaniel. I just think I think that for me, that is the better fit for him because you have that change of pace, and Raheem needs that, right? Like Raheem's not an every down back. Jeff Wilson's not an every down back, right? Like Dalvin is your every down back, but then you have the change of pace that you can plug and play off of that. And I think that's a team that's here to compete now, and that might make a hair up better in the East, which is still a winnable division. Like to me, Buffalo's still like floundering. They're still figuring it out. Like they just can't get over that hump. Like, yes, they're like, they're going to win 10 games, right? You can confidently etch them in to win 10 games, but I don't think I don't know. Like I just haven't seen them put it together when it matters most. And that's a winnable division in my opinion. And I don't care who's quarterback in the Jets. They're still run by Woody Johnson. So I still have no faith, even though I love their head coach.
So I do say that's probably where Dalvin Cook wants to go for all the reasons that you said. Also, no state income tax. Believe it or not, that saves him money, right? And you can't tell me. Don't you find it a little weird how Dalvin Cook's being tied to the New York Jets and the New England Patriots? They're fine with trying to. It's basically what we do in our auction draft league. They're trying to. I feel like the Jets and the Patriots
drive up
the price, so Miami shells out that money. And Dalvin Cook is like, I'll oblige. Help me guys get paid. Yeah. Like, okay. And I think that's ultimately where he wants to go. I kind of think that's where he goes too.
So Dalvin Cook's going to suffer from the same thing that Le'Veon Bell did. Le'Veon Bell, before that holdout season and before going, was the best thing in the NFL, right? I mean, the dude was catching 80 balls a year, running for 1,000 yards. Yeah, he took the year off, but I just think that's where Dalvin is at this point in his career. And the problem is where we are heading into the season. He's probably going to get a 1-year deal, right? Yes. And have to do this thing all over again. And the production is not going to match the dollar sign for the 1-year deal. And then you're going to quickly watch him fall off the face of the earth. Like, it's just the way that it goes, man. Yeah. Todd Gurley is still 28 years old, and he hasn't been in the league for how many years now? Like, this just happens to the position, man. It happens to the position.
All right. So I see you. Can I
Yeah,
I
man.
see your Dalvin Cook, and I raise you Ezekiel Elliott.
I love it. We're staying with the running backs.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, let's running backs need loving too. All right. Where do you see? Where would you like to see Ezekiel? I will give you the floor this time, as
You're gonna
opposed to I
give me the
started.
floor.
I will. I will let you start off. They say
Here's
age.
another.
They always Weston. They always say age before beauty. So go ahead, Weston.
I am older, right? I am older.
How old are you?
40.
Yeah, you're older.
You haven't. Oh, you haven't even turned 40 yet.
No.
You bastard. You will this year, right? I just want to make sure. Yeah, you will this year. That being said, Dalvin. Ezekiel's another one, man. Like his best football is behind him. And Zeke is like he toted the rock heavy for the Cowboys early in his career, was highly productive, but then highly banged up, and we haven't seen the same version of him in 2 years. If I'm all right, I'll just come out and say what where I'd love to see him go, and where I think makes a lot of sense for him is to the Los Angeles Chargers. Believe it or not, and
Oh.
why I say that, I know you don't want him. I probably wouldn't want him either. But the truth is like you got your own little rumblings right now with Eckler, right? Like you use Eckler a lot, and his body type is not necessarily built for the way that he does get used or the volume that he gets used. I'd love to see you guys incorporate more Isaiah Spiller. I don't know why that hasn't really happened all that much, but can't help but ignore the connection between Kellen Moore and Ezekiel Elliott. If there's anybody who can understand what you can get, who might be capable of getting the most from Zeke at this point in his career, probably his former offensive coordinator. Let me put it to you like this, dude. I'm a firm believer that if the Chargers aren't sniffing around him right now, depending upon how the first week or two of preseason, I don't know what his market is. I really don't know what his market is.
Okay. Listen, everything you said makes sense. Some Chargers fans are actually pro, Zeke Elliott bringing him in. I just don't think he brings anything additional. Listen, the Chargers do need an RB2, but I don't really think he moves the needle as an RB2, in my honest opinion. So I wouldn't hate it if the Los Angeles Chargers signed Ezekiel Elliott. It is what it is. They did this last year. They brought in Sony Michel really late into the offseason, and that didn't really pan out. I just kind of fear that might happen again. That being said, there's a team out there that I think will give him a chance to win and a chance to play, but he doesn't have to be his old self. We just were talking about Dalvin Cook and the Minnesota Vikings. And I know that the Minnesota Vikings parted ways with Dalvin Cook because of money. And now they're starting, their new renaissance at the running back position with Madison. However, yes, Madison has proved from spot starts to be extremely efficient. Spot starts. Sometimes more, less is more and more is less. Whatever you want to say. Doesn't mean you're going to, prorate, he's going to, the numbers he puts up into a full 17 game season, he's going to be able to, be as efficient throughout the whole season and be able to take that wear and tear. Why not throw Ezekiel Elliott to be, Alexander Madison's second in command? Ezekiel Elliott can provide, some spelling opportunities for Madison. But in addition, I think what Ezekiel Elliott is still elite at, and I'm using the word Ezekiel Elliott is still elite, is pass protection. Bingo. Kirk Cousins is perhaps one of the most flustered quarterbacks out there outside of Derek Carr. You get some pressure on him, he crumbles. He can provide an aspect on third down, whether it be catching the ball or pass protection, that can help support Cousin and in protecting him. So I'm saying I think a perfect match would be Ezekiel Elliott to the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, I can't dispute that. I just don't think there's gonna. Dude, he's a running back, and I just don't think there's gonna be much of a market, right? Unless here's the difference. people like Dalvin Cook, people like Ezekiel Elliott, Kareem Hunt, the list goes on. These guys, they want carries, right? But they have to be willing. I don't think any team is interested in these guys to be their number one, right? And that's kind of what they want an opportunity to be, but they'll never be a number one again. They need to be willing. And if they're not willing, there's no market. There's just literally no market for any of them because they want too much money because they've been highly productive at past points in their career. They know this is their last shot at potentially a multi-year contract. So it'll be interesting. I can't ignore the Kellen Moore factor in this to say but
hey, you're connecting dots. I love it.
I mean, I don't do it often. So we're already running longer than I anticipated because I thought this was we joked about it, but this was a knock the rust off. Let's get back into the groove approach for this week. We'll get into a full swing of things as we progress. So why don't we each just pick one more player that we're thinking about? I'll let you go since I'm springing that on you to pick one more free agent that is top of mind.
You know what? I feel like the player I'm going to pick is going to steal from you. So how about you go first? Because I'm pretty.
I'll
confident.
just take the obvious. I'll say Jadeveon Clowney. You say.
I was going to say.
Okay, you say what you're thinking.
Go ahead. Go ahead. This is Dalton Risner. You're like, who? The guard from Denver. I would love to see him go to Miami because they are really soft in the interior of their offensive line, and you got to keep Tua healthy, right? And I think he would help. He would help solidify the interior offensive line. Now it's not a sexy name, right? But he's still a starting quality player. So I'm saying Dalton Risner would fit perfectly in what the Miami Dolphins are trying to do.
All right. I don't have an opinion on Dalton Risner.
I know you wouldn't.
With you. And here's why. Because I feel like offensive linemen,
they don't get no love.
They don't get love, but every team is in need of quality offensive linemen.
And he's a quality offensive team, lineman.
30 of 32. You can't tell me this guy can't find a job, right? And if I'm his agent, what I'm waiting for is we need if our market's not hot right now, we just need 2 weeks of the preseason to go through. An injury is going to pop up, and you're going to get a contract. It's going to happen, and then you're going to get a 1-year deal. But can you play through an extension, right? Towards the latter half of the year, or in the offseason next year. And Reisner he is a quality player, man. I think he deserves a shot.
Real quick. His PFF grade was 61.1. He had 1 penalty last year and allowed 3 sacks. That's not terrible
for dog shit football team last year too, by the way.
Yeah. All right, so go Clowney. Spot.
You totally misunderstood me, by the way, because I was like, I'm going to say Jadeveon Clowney, but I wanted you to say what you thought about Jadeveon Clowney before I went in. But you just threw out your player. All good.
Oh, this is Spider. Okay, Spider.
All right. So, yeah. I'll say Jadeveon Clowney. I'm always interested in edge rushers. And what's so funny about Jadeveon is I've never seen a man make so much money and have so much pull in the league based off of one play he made in college.
Yeah.
He destroyed the running back in the backfield for Michigan. But obviously an uber athletic guy. I'm going to be a little bit of a homer here, man.
Yes, this is what I was thinking. Go ahead.
Dude, he's another one. He's just going to hang tight. Guy's made plenty of money in the NFL, right? Multiple contracts, multiple teams, he's in no rush. Trust me, a veteran like him wants nothing to do with being involved in training camp and getting nicked up. This guy just wants to play on Sunday when the tape is rolling. That's what he wants to do. Coming off a really poor season. But Lou, what team, what coach specifically, what team in the NFL does better with defensive line reclamation talent? It's the San Francisco 49ers, man. And they're going to carry 10 on their 53 roster, right? So there's a spot to be earned. If one of these guys, dude, they just signed, takes a little wind out of the sails that they just brought in former first-round pick Taco Charlton. But I love it. I love hey, teams viewed this guy as a first-round talent before in his life. It didn't come to fruition for him in Dallas. Didn't really work out in the year that he spent with the Kansas City Chiefs. But we have Chris Forrester, who has literally taken people off the scrap heap and made them big contracts after they've left the 49ers and have not been able to retain them. If Clowney still wants to play ball and he's sitting back, I promise you there's no team that values – we all value edge rushers, but there's no team that values a project. Because I would argue that Jadeveon Clowney is still like never reached what his potential was supposed to be. Not saying he would at this point in career, but if you could – what do you have? I'm pulling – let me pull something up. In 2021, he had 9 sacks. In 2022, he had 2 sacks.
Yeah.
If you could split the difference,
playing opposite of Myles Garrett, how do you only have 2 sacks?
That's what I'm saying. But now if you're playing opposite of Bosa and your rotational piece, and you're still an edge rusher, so even as a rotational piece based on contracts, you're still going to make money.
Yeah.
With a chance to compete for a Super Bowl.
Yeah. It's so funny.
Feels right to me.
You should be thanking me right now because that's exactly where I was going to go. Jadeveon Clowney, for the mere fact that you guys are fantastic at defense. First of all, you've lost some people along the defensive line to free agency, right?
Yep.
So it would have helped replenish some of the losses that you had. In addition, you guys are fantastic when it comes to reclamation projects on the defensive line from former first-round picks or early round picks, first and second round picks. He would fit in really well. Rotational, spell Bosa, give him breath so he doesn't have that wear and tear on him. And yeah, I think it's perfect. Now, if I'm being a contrarian and I want to just agree with you, I'll keep him in division and have him have that paper chase with the Los Angeles Rams. I just feel like LA is something that like he'd be all about that live type stuff. No, I think he's kind of glitzy, I think he's about that money. I know they can't pay him a lot, but like the LA lifestyle type of thing. And they lost, Leonard Floyd, and he would think that the fact that, hey, it would be cool to play next to Aaron Donald, on that Rams defense. So if I'm just being a contrarian, the fact that I don't want to disagree with you, but I am in lockstep with you. He makes too much sense to be a Niner.
Which means he won't be, right? Because it just makes too much sense. And they already have 2 reclamation projects on the roster right now, and that tends to be enough because they have Cleveland Farrell and now Taco Charlton.
Charlton will not make the season. He will be a cut.
No,
I will put money on that.
I'm willing to bet he doesn't make the 53 anyway.
No.
But it's fine. But you know what I mean? Like if he doesn't, he doesn't. But Jadeveon Clowney has that unique ability based on the position he plays and his quote unquote pedigree. He could just hang back, bro, and watch the preseason unfold. And he's gonna get calls.
Yeah.
Like he's gonna get calls because he plays a premier position in the NFL. It's that simple. And injuries happen, right? Or talent flames out. But I think it just makes too much sense. And you know what else I always think about is like the 49ers care so much about this compensatory pick, right? Like formula that they've done so well. Anymore. He doesn't even count. He doesn't even count anymore, right? So you don't lose anything by bringing in a veteran. Even if you bring him at the veteran minimum for an edge rusher, like the guy's still making money and he's been paid hand over fist throughout his career. So, and it'd be nice to get him back for those years that he was in Seattle.
Yeah.
All right, Lou, that wraps us up with our opening for the 2023-2024 season. I'm not counting what the offseason work that we did through the draft and free agency, etc. But we will be back. We will do the obvious like we always do. We will predict accolades. We will predict division winners. We will predict playoff teams. We will do all of that fun stuff over the next few weeks on top of just kind of recapping the positives and negatives of, albeit brief, of preseason performance from our teams. But felt so good to hop back on with you. Appreciate you as always, man. But until next time, that's a wrap.